a reminder, this is an informal session. We're going to talk a little bit about some activities that Victoria has been spearheading for us. And I'm going to turn it over to Barb to introduce our special guest here in just a moment. In the meantime, we'll also talk about not only some interesting use cases that she's come up with in terms of these interactive photo books and albums and those type of things, but we're also going to, Barb's going to show you a couple of new features that we've produced over in the past couple of weeks, a quick look function and some form development and things like that. So, as we continue to proceed forward, we're clearly developing more roadmap items for your use to try and make the service a little bit more user-friendly, a little bit richer with functionality and capabilities, and also offer you some new use cases and ways of doing things. So, with that, I guess I'll call on somebody first at the outset. Kathy, why don't you give us a sense of, since we last spoke, any ideas or any things you want to specifically hear about, or you want to share with us in terms of use cases?
Hear what Victoria is, how she is doing all the albums in there and everything else. So I'm quite, I'm looking forward to hearing all about that. I'm still very much in learning mode for this. I devoted my most recent time with Ponga to writing and learning what Medium was and writing a blog. So.
Oh, great. Well, since you're going to be our special guest at the next meeting on July 30th, we'll be able to expand on some of that blog post information as well as other content and use cases that you're working on between now and then. So we're looking forward to welcoming you as our special guest next month.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to share anything in terms of?
So
okay.
I have been, I haven't uploaded that many new pictures. I've more been working with sort of trying out different things. So I've added text, so chapter from a book that I'm writing about people, memorials from different things. I've added links to YouTube videos, podcasts about different people.
Okay.
And that seems to work quite well. I'm interested to see how to connect all the dots in Victoria's experiment. It's fairly easy to make one slide in a PowerPoint, but it's to get them all together, because I've found that it's really, even if I don't have a lot of photos now, something that I would want to do is to have like one folder and several different people that belong to, for example, a parish. So you have subfolders in the folders. But I haven't found a way to do that yet. I think that you possibly have to upload everything at the same time, or maybe use Victoria's idea and put it on slides, and that way getting it into one folder, divide it up, because otherwise it's going to be really hard to flick through maybe thousands of names to find the right person.
And if memory serves, you have a pretty sizable photo library, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not intending to upload all of it.
Yeah.
Don't worry. but even 1,000 or 2,000 photos will be sort of a lot. So I'm thinking of rethinking what I'm doing.
Yeah.
At the moment, I'm not on speaking terms with the face recognition software, because it's trying to tell me that two different men is the same person because they look very similar. Just because they have a mustache doesn't mean that they are the same person.
Sure.
Yeah.
We can talk through some little strategies to do with some of what you want to do for where we are right now and where you are right now, and lean in on some of the kinds of things we want to be doing going forward. In fact, that's one of the things that's been so valuable from getting the feedback from all of you. Hello, Jim. Hello, Connie. Welcome. Has been, getting these insights about how people are using them. And then we can show you a little bit about how we're rolling that into features. But for right now, I think it's very helpful to get that insight about where you are, and you have such deep experience in these photos and what you're trying to do with them. I appreciate your being very thoughtful in how you move into it. That's very wise. Because sometimes, like Kathy has written in her own blog post about Kathy, who is a professional photo organizer with decades of experience, you know, to a certain extent, there's a bit of planning you want to do before you run headlong into something, because if you don't, you'll get frustrated and have to undo and do again. Do you want to chat, Pam?
So I was going to add exactly what you just said, Barbara. I am completely guilty of jumping in too quickly. I got all excited about Ponga and I uploaded like just photos, unedited, just photos. And then when I brought them and looked at them, some of them were landscapes, some of them were portrait. The people were sideways. There were a couple of upside down ones. And it just wouldn't flow. I also kind of made the mistake of uploading like 50 of them at the same time. And it just got me all messed up. So I worked with Barbara and I deleted everything and started over. It seemed radical, but now I think it's really paid off because I'm being much more thoughtful about my uploads. I already have folders of things. And so now I'm just kind of doing it as I upload a folder at a time.
Yeah.
I've also been spending more time cropping the image so that I've got some scans where I just took a photo album and scanned it. So it's got the vignetted page. It wasn't sharing the story that I wanted to share. So I pulled out the photos and I've rescanned just the photo and then photoshopped it to be just the image. It's going much better now, and I'm only uploading like 10 at a time. And then I'm letting it go to gallery, and then I'm sorting the images to make sure they're in the right place 10 at a time. I just had way too many at the beginning.
Yeah.
So
And
I think it's smarter to get more organized. Even though I got excited, don't get so excited.
Yeah.
Go a little
You
bit
have a-
slower
yeah.
and you'll have a much better time. I literally just tossed Ponga aside for a couple of weeks out of frustration. And then I reached out and said, okay, I know I'm doing something wrong. And Barbara was like, yeah, let's take a look. So thank you. I'm doing better now. And
Yay.
project, in case you don't know, I have a photo album, 2 or 3 photo albums from my 4th or 5th great grandfather of the 68th Ohio during the Civil War. And there are collectors and people, so I am now learning, who they love the 68th Ohio, but I apparently, so I have recently been told, I need to insure my photos for between $10,000 and $15,000. And I am the only person that any of these people know of. I have the largest single collection of photos from the 68th, specifically only of the 68th. And they're labeled, they're identified, and I know where they came from. They're mine.
Yeah.
I can trace them through the family. So
Yeah.
hoping to use Ponga to communicate with those folks that are also collectors. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm doing. And to finally add, I'm at work, so you'll have to forgive me if I bounce out or appear to be on the phone. I will do my best to answer up.
Thank you. It's just such a wonderful project that you're working on. I'm so glad that you're already making those connections out with the rest of that community. It's like a visit from, Antiques Roadshow or something. It's just incredible. So we'll come back to that one. And we've got you, Kathy. Oh, sorry, and Cameron, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to make a couple of comments there that are just alternatives. One thing, Pam, we might want to hook you up with another one of our members just for some kindred spiritism. We do have one of our members that is curating I forgot the actual name, but it was an infantry unit that's nicknamed the Timberwolves that fought in Northern Europe during World War II. And she is doing the same thing. And her curation activity is also associated with a museum outside of Salt Lake City that the Air Force is supporting through a grant to help her get all of this information together. We might want to connect you guys to talk a little bit about how you're thinking about both of those, because there's an entire ecosystem around supporting the archival and storytelling elements around US military history. So anyway, that might be an interesting connection we want to make later on. Another comment that I was going to make relative to your talk track there was around this idea of, you know, how you do it. We've tried to develop functionality that will support anybody's use case, whether you're uploading thousands of photos and then picking pieces out, or whether or not you want to do it in tranches, or however you want to do it. But one of the interesting insights I got from talking to one of the professional photo managers that we work with was this idea that it's very difficult to have an intimate relationship with more than a few handfuls of photos at a time. And as you're curating the story, it's important to really sit down and work through the imagery and the events and the people that are in those photos, so that you can give each photo its due course in terms of a storytelling platform, rather than just a cursory little comment in one place or another. I think that's good for some people. Like, for instance, I have a sister that's a little bit ADD, and her goal is get as much in there and start the curation process later, so then she could come back and develop it in much more detail, using those as almost mnemonics to remind her that she wants to tell a story about this picture that was in this category and something else in another category. And before, you know, she wanted to try and start doing that on spreadsheets. And now she's realized, you know what, I can just go in there and put little notes in each one of these things and go forward. So we're trying to support everybody's activities if we can. Anybody else, I think, who has a large library that's had an interesting experience with facial recognition or uploading? Connie, Jim?
I had an interesting picture that was a big family group, and there was a lot of little children in it. And when the facial recognition came up, all the little children were one of the adults. It recognized them as, because they were all related. I don't know whether these children are her children, or, you know, as I just said, and I deleted it all.
Yeah. Yeah, we're working very directly with, we have a couple of companies that we work with in our ecosystem. One of them is a university. One of them is a household name company that you might have heard of, that you are probably aware of. And our local service provider that's a technology support ecosystem. And we're trying to help them with refinement of the algorithms and to help the face detection become a little bit more crisp. And there's a lot of initiatives that are going forward in the engineering of these capabilities, so that they'll just improve over time the more we all use them. So, you know, I personally don't have as many photos, kind of, even as you do, I think, in the system. And so I haven't run
just
into,
getting started too.
yeah, exactly.
And I need to do what Kathy said, I need to delete them all and start over.
Yeah.
Mhm.
There, we can go through some, and I'd be very happy to also, I'm always open to do a kind of a one-on-one with people to sort of walk through your particular challenges, which is how we came to getting, you know, Pam's situation untangled. And that was a very special problem because, of course, these are 4 generations back. There's no living memory of who these people are and remembering who they are. In cases where you have 5 children all come out with the same name because they look so much alike, you know, there are, in the face details page, a very simple way to add a name if you already know who they are. And then you're essentially teaching the system how to recognize who that is as they come up again. But we can go through those kinds of things. Add person was a very important feature addition that came apart from doing exactly that. And frankly, I know exactly the great grandmother and her 6 children that I learned that feature on because it was a problem. Twins is a special problem as well, similarly. And some people, you know, twins tend to run in families. So you have a few more.
So thanks very much for all of this input, because this is very helpful as we feed this back to our engineers who are working with technology providers to help us do a better job here. So we'll talk about some of the ways of remediating the use cases. And Connie, that might be a side conversation that we might want to have afterwards, just to see if we can help you get your library sorted out a little bit. Before too much time goes by, I want to turn the meeting over to Barbara to introduce our special guest to talk a little bit about this really cool interactive photo book activity that she's kind of invented using Ponga. So Barb, why don't you talk a little bit about
Sure. Sure. As many of you know, I do a lot of different things here at Ponga. Among them is help my alter ego Audie handle those support calls. And in the process, I've had just this ball getting a chance to get to know our members, guests, and the Ponga curious as they come to our website and chat us up. Well, Victoria is just such a person. She first approached us back in February. Immediately excited, immediately knew that she wanted to use Ponga, and I hadn't even had a chance to tell her what we do. It was pretty remarkable, and we've continued these conversations. She's of course in Eastern Australia, in many different places at different times, somewhere in Eastern Australia, for which I get little geography lessons as she moves around in her caravan. She's had this fabulous passion for what we could do and bring that forward. And in the process, specifically wanted to be able to, well, actually, she brought us a new word from the very beginning, as you may have seen us in social media or in our blog posts, the idea of a storyboard. Now, in the mainland United States, as we refer to it, a storyboard is what ad agencies use. And in this context, it comes from what I always thought of as a felt board. Well, this joy with language has been great fun between us now, as we keep learning the American, Canadian, and Australian expressions and English expressions for so many different terms. Usually in the back and forth clarification of these terms, we learn more about the larger case of the larger story. And that is exactly what we're doing in terms of the picture. So the storyboard came along to say, wait a minute, why do I have to use only a photograph? Why can't it be an assembly? Of course it can be. It can be any kind of assembly. And once we start with that idea, well, then why can't I take an entire photo book that I'd previously printed and turn that into Ponga? Why, of course you can. And that's what she's done going through this. And of course, if you can do that, as we sort of hinted at it last month's Zoomin session, you can do that for an album too. At the end of the day, it's like saying I have a whole lot of pages. What if I put them together? Yeah, that's kind of cool. So that's what she's put together, and she can share with you a little bit about how she's gone about that and the decision making to do it. And take it away, Victoria, also known as victoriaspress.com.
That's me. Thanks, Barb. That's a really nice introduction. And just before I get started, I apologize. I don't have an Australian accent.
Oh,
Sorry about that. Born and raised in Montreal. So been in Australia for about 15 years. So will my family back in Canada say I have an Australian accent? No, I really don't. So sorry about that. Yes, I am on the east coast of Australia and in a place called Bowen at the moment. My partner and I are retired since 2014. And one of the things we do is we travel a lot. We've gone through various renditions of caravans and motorhomes. Right now we have a small 22-year-old motorhome of Winnebago. We trundle along and we love it. We also have done some international travel, and that will come into what I'm going to talk about. And of course, international travel is not happening. A bit about me will explain why I've probably ended up in this place is that I migrated to Australia in my mid 40s, met a man in England. What are you going to do? So with that, all of my family is at the time and was in Montreal and Toronto and Vancouver Island. And my aged parents at the time were 80.
and they were in Ottawa. So I left everybody and came here with 5 suitcases. And then we retired in 2014. And at that time, we just took off, went to Europe for 4 months and tripped around and backpacks and all that sort of thing. Later on in that year, I'll digress. When I was working, I retired from an environment of office management, executive assistant, and event planning. So the best part about my jobs that I had over the years was the events, putting together events. PowerPoint was a big part of some of those events, and I did a lot of that. And I did a lot of newsletter writing, again, pictures and words, pictures and words. So when we retired, we did that. And unfortunately, at the end of 2014, my mother, who was 90 at the time, had a wonderful life, was in hospice care in Ottawa. And I went over Christmas 2014 to be with her for her last few weeks. And very fortunate to be there. My dad also was 92 at the time and married 70 years, totally dependent on my mom. I had to put him in a nursing home. And I'm the youngest of 4. And for some reason, because I was retired, the other 4 figured, let Vicky do it. She can do it all. So here comes the sad part for all of us photograph lovers, is that I had to clean out my parents' apartment. And Mom had albums and albums and albums of the old sticky kind that you stick the page in, and she had the little black corners to hold the photos in, with nothing about those photographs. Where they were taken, they traveled quite a bit, who was in it, nothing. Quite a few of those albums, unfortunately, went into the trash. Now I'm heartbroken because I think, crazy fool. But my daughter took some. She's in Montreal. She took some. She's got some fabulous old photos. But it was a really, now 5 years on, a really hard lesson to learn. I should have packed them up in a box and sent them home to Australia. I didn't. So the next couple of years after that, when I got back and I had thrown all these photographs out, I looked at all my photographs, and I probably, like a lot of people, I had a box of loose photographs and negatives. And I said, if anything ever happens to me, they're gone. Somebody's going to throw them in the bin. So I mad scanned everything, and I'm a bit of a labeler. So I labeled every picture, all in years, who's in it, saved them all as apologize for the bird. There's a massive big bird outside my window at the moment. And so that I did all that. I scanned all that stuff. And then I started doing what everybody was doing, was these fabulous little photo books. You would go online. I used a particular company here and put all these in. And it was, Barbara and I have talked about this digital scrapbooking. You put the little fancy things in that give you all kinds of embellishments and emoticons, and off I went. Glossy page, matte page, 20 pages, 40 pages. And I did them all. I went through Michael and my whole entire relationship and documented them all in books, and they sit on the shelf underneath the TV. Pulled out every once in a while when we want to say where we've been. And then it was beginning of COVID last year. We were on a trip and we had to come home. And I got into Ancestry in a big way. I had been given an old Xerox copy of a family tree years and years ago when my mother was still living. And I started on that, and I just went off. This was just great. This was the greatest thing, but it's very solitary work. You got all this stuff. I'd get very excited, and I would just spend hours, and I'd find people, and I'm a bit of a detective, so I was finding people all over the place. And then when I was done, and with so many of the sites, you can download the documents. I was saving everything, naming it, putting it into different folders. And I thought, well, I'll make another photo book. This will be a really good one. I can put in all those documents. And that's what I did. created this all singing, all dancing book, kept it under about 30 pages, well, 28 actually, and sent it off to be done and arrived. Oh, there were some awful mistakes. Typos that your grandmother wouldn't want to read, and images that just were not right on the page. So correct those, off I go and get another copy. And believe it or not, the next one had an error too. So I thought, no, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way to do this. And it was right around that time that I thought, well, I'm going to take my passion for ancestry and my love of writing, and I'll make a website. I started as the Ancestry Hound. And through Ancestry Hound, I found Ponga. All I was looking for was a little co-sharing of links. You know, can I put a link on my site to you? I think I love your product, which is what I did. Went away on a trip, came back, and then met with Barbara. And from there, it's kind of snowballed pretty quick from there. And I've made some of the user errors that others have, uploaded too many pictures and all that sort of stuff. But it was, I think it was around April time, just before Easter or after, it was after Easter. I just thought, I don't want it just the one picture and the story, because so much of what I had in that ancestry album wasn't a photograph. It was a document from 1780, somebody's birth certificate. I have a will from the 1700s. And I had a lot of text. Eventually, as you go through the album and the generations, when photographs started being taken in the late 1800s, early 1900s, I have photographs. And I thought, just before that, I thought, well, I could do a storyboard. And the storyboard idea came to me because I just had this flash of my mother's Sunday school when I was a kid, and she had all these little figurines that she would stick. She had all the wise men and the camels and the whole thing, and she would teach her Sunday school class. And I thought, well, that's what I can do. So I went to PowerPoint because that's my go-to. And PowerPoint, you can just turn the whole thing into a JPEG. Voila, you've got a new image to upload. And it's an image with its own name. So even though those other photographs, some of them were already in Ponga, this was a new photograph with a new name. Up I put that, and it facial recognized the new JPEG photograph. And I had a storyboard with it. It was a totally different look to the just standalone photo. So when I took the giant ancestor, when I told Barbara, I said, I've got this mammoth thing that's 28 pages long. And I just smashed it. I just did 28 slides in PowerPoint, saved the whole thing as in 28 individual JPEGs, renamed them all, and uploaded them to Ponga. And that's what some of you have. And it's exactly what I saw in my mind, how it would work. It's worked exactly as I thought it would work. We had to, Barb and I did a couple of conversations about, because it's 28 slides and it goes in order. And I didn't want anybody to mess with my order. And so if they're commenting on the main album, oh, my order gets all messed up. So the answer to that was, well, of course, you're going to link through to the actual photograph. It's going to open up and they can comment on that. And that's in a shared folder. That's in a comment folder. The other one is just in the album is view only. So they can look at it, but they can link through to the other one they're shared to. I can make comments on obviously on the view only main album. And if I mess up the order, well, I can fix it up probably in less than 10 minutes. It's only 28 slides. And it's just worked a treat. It's so good. I've got 2 more in train at the moment of actual albums using a different platform for one of them to develop it, not PowerPoint. And it's fantastic. It just works so easily. And I think for someone, because I have had the issues with uploading a whole bunch of photos or getting excited and uploading one and then uploading another and then uploading another. So I've also learned that if I'm working on what I call an album and I want it to sit all in that one set of photos, I make sure I've got it all done. I upload the whole album together. It's got its time and its date, and then I'll rename that as album 101 or something like that. And it's done. It's there. It's finished. It might need some reshuffling to get the order right. I can link. I've learned to link back to the album. I found a place to put it. There are many places you could link back from a standalone photo back to the main album. There are different ways of doing it. And you could, when you're doing a PowerPoint or whatever platform you're using, you could put a little button. You could put a little button, click here to go back to the other menu. I just put it up in the description text. So it has worked really, really well. I'm very excited about it. The other thing that I can do, because with Ancestry, and any of you know that work with, you know, down the Ancestry track, you're constantly unearthing more information. So wanting to put a new page into a hardcover book means you're printing another book. With this, I can pull a slide out, completely redo it, and put it back in whenever I want. And the pictures that are in there can still link out to what was in the shared album. That's not a problem. That will still work.
Uh-oh, we may have, I don't know if you can hear our voice, Victoria, but we've lost you. Okay, we'll give her a minute or two. She may have to log out and come back in again. But I'll add a little color commentary while she's coming back in. It's been great fun to be on the side as she, you know, with the time zone here to California, I can pretty much tell when she rolls out of bed. And we chat through some of the different things that she's been doing as she keeps updating these albums. Are you back? No, not yet. The one of the things that yeah, she'll come back in again in a second. One of the things that has been a question is now, what do you do if you want? Oh, there she comes, and she's back.
Just got knocked.
I was afraid that bird got you.
No, I've said at the beginning there, I said it's going to be about at the hour mark that it's going to say you've been on too long, and that's exactly what it was. So sorry about
the
that,
Wi-Fi.
Folks.
The Wi-Fi.
The Wi-Fi. Yeah, I'm tethered to my phone, and it's, you know, it's come to that you're using a lot of data today. So that's my phone sitting here and giving me all my.
We're grateful.
Yeah. So where was I, Barbara?
You were talking about adding in a page into the album.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So with that and sending this off to my cousins, I fully expect that when I send to my cousins, they're going to say, no, you've got that wrong. Or I've got a photo you can put in there. There's going to be something they want to add that's an actual concrete. It's not words. It's a document or a photograph.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to want that in there. And I can do that. And I can pull that slide down, put another one in.
Yeah.
Name change or a spelling of name I might have wrong somewhere. So with that, so if you're working on any kind of ancestry project, whether it's for yourself or for a client, the opportunity even just to say, do I have the right order? These are the documents I have. Because if anybody, and I'm sure there are lots of people here who use one of the many, many ancestry sites and family tree sites that are available, they're not interactive with family. You're not going to sit there and both look at it. They're going to go and look at something. It's not interactive. This is completely interactive. And you know, when someone makes a comment, I find out about it. Somebody has a question, I find out about it. So I just think it's so user friendly and for me, because I can be a bit obsessive compulsive, I could sit and do it all day long. And I'm a bit, mind you, Cameron, I was thinking about what you said about your sister, and I and Barbara knows this about me. I can get so excited, I get ahead of myself, and I say to Barbara, I need to slow down, enjoy the journey, write some text, enjoy it one slide at a time. Otherwise, you're just backtracking. You're going back to the beginning. And so when you're working on something, work on that, move on to the next thing. And that's something I've definitely learned. That's been me all the time. Even with the album that I've been sharing, what I call the BLH album, I look at it now and I go, geez, I could have done that a bit better.
Do you want to talk a little bit about how you've been sharing those, Victoria?
How I've been sharing, how I've been sharing them. Yeah, I've been sharing them with, because I have my website, I've asked people to I'm quite happy to share. So I've done that. I put invites out. I have a form on my site for people to fill out, and I will send them my album. And it's worked. People are asking for it, and I'm perfectly fine with that. The people in this particular album are no longer with us. The documents are not protected by any kind of copyright. So I'm very happy about that. And then I'm sharing with family. I will do a few other albums that will have nothing to do with family. They will have to do with travel. And I'm thinking I might share them with some travel people that I happen to know, who I've written articles for. I think that might be a fun little niche to say, hey, look what we can do. And that's pretty much what I'm doing at this point with the sharing. Plus I talk it up because I really like it.
Hey, Victoria, why,
yes,
if you're making a blog kind of post for travel, why would you use Ponga to do that? It sounds like Finding Penguins or some other traveling apps would be more of its specifics. Ponga, I take it as a photo album, not a travel blog.
Well, I think if I look at what we call the gray nomads here, and I think in Canada they're called snowbirds. They go down to the US for the wintertime. There are a lot of little clubs, and they'll go fossicking for gold or emeralds, but there's a lot of little clubs, and they move around together, and they do events together, be fishing, whatever it may be that brings these people together on the road. And they tend to, I think a lot of them communicate through Facebook. I really do. I think that's where they communicate. But if you're taking photographs on a trip and you want to share them, you've gone to this fishing place or you've had this experience on this track, I think for those types of people, they would enjoy Ponga. No, it's not going to be something that a travel mag is going to put a link into, but an article written about what you can do with it, yeah, would land in the pages of any travel mag here for sure. For sure. It's just a natural fit. I mean, I've had this conversation with Barbara, and in that, one thing I always notice at these when I'm away is the men fish and play golf, and the women don't do much. So they may be knitting, they may be scrapbooking. Difficult to carry a lot of scrapbooking supplies when you're on the road. There's an opportunity, because you can carry this wherever you go, to do it wherever you go. And
you're onto something too there, Victoria, because I know that I have friends who do a lot of, well, they did, and who knows what's going to happen in that industry, did a lot of cruises. And they, exactly what you said, they're currently keeping track with and contact with people, and they meet up and go on the next cruise together. So they form friendships.
same thing.
Yeah, and then what they're doing is, as you said, they are using Facebook, which is one of the absolute worst places to put your photos for any kind of longevity or anything, because it compresses them is the other big problem. Like, it's a terrible place to share beautiful photos. So I think you really on
It
something.
is.
I think you got
No,
something.
I think it's a great fit. I think it's a really, really good fit, because if you have, you could have 6 families that have gone on a cruise. The cruise is a great example, actually, because they're always throwing pictures at you on a cruise. And everybody's a member of Ponga. Everybody's making a different album and sharing. Everybody's had an experience, and it's protected. Oh, you like this, don't you, Barbara? You think this is great? It is. It's the best. And there are
Okay,
so
we'll make
many
more.
applications to do that. I mean, I've just been, there are reason for being up this way. I digress a bit. Our reason for being up this way is my partner's ex-military. He was in the Australian Army for 22 years ago. There was a reunion of his corps up here, and we came up for that. And I was sitting there thinking, there's a lot of photos being taken here. There's a lot of stories here. And there's a lot of old people here. Somebody needs to write this stuff down. So it all sort of came to be, Michael had worked with, years ago, he'd worked with a woman, her name is Allison. She became the highest ranked female officer in the Australian Army. She became a brigadier before she retired. Pretty
Wow.
impressive. But he worked with her years and years ago. And they're putting together the 100th reunion of his corps for 2025. And guess who volunteered to help with a little encouragement from me? Michael. So I said to him, I said, you need to get me on the phone with Allison, because there is an opportunity here for that platform to be used before the reunion.
Yeah.
I mean, I envisaged this, because during this reunion, they had a bunch of slides up on the screen.
Right.
I didn't know who they were. Nobody, they were just a bunch of pictures. But I could see I could see a Ponga album up on the screen.
Yeah.
And somebody manipulating it.
Yeah.
For 450 people.
Yeah.
Hovering over it, opening the text.
Right.
You could even be writing text with people. Oh, somebody coming to you and saying, I remember that. Type that in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's endless.
We've consistently discovered that those moments of personal, strong personal experiences that bond people, certainly families, certainly family history, war, and I'm going to guess all kinds of trauma and disasters and those kinds of community experiences that bring people together we talk about, it's difficult to talk about, and yet talking about them from images that start with the facts in the image, but then open the door to have those conversations about things that are sometimes difficult to talk about right there, and sometimes easier to talk about by juxtaposition without actually saying the words. Right here in this group, we've already had several of you talk specifically about war experiences. Dennis, who's not here, he may pop in later. I've talked to him extensively about his own work for his dad's World War II photos, and he's also working on his own Vietnam photos. We have, over and over again, this comes up as Cameron was saying, but there's also all kinds of those things that are special. Cruise is generally a special good thing, but it's community building. It's positive. Who goes to a wedding these days without photos being shown? But you're right. The photos of, wait a minute, was that Bobby as a child? Oh, wow. Look at that. I remember that, swimming hole, that kind of thing. No, it's really.
So you're right. Really the possibilities are endless. And I do think there are certain things that definitely bond us to want to tell our story. The I remember when, and I remember where I was at that time, and everybody's got that. So I see that there are possibilities for this to use a military term, infiltrate a lot of different areas.
Right,
Mhm.
right. Thank
You
you.
know.
Pam asked about printing books out of Ponga. And, one of the things that we're trying to do with the platform is stay very close to the core domains of capability that we articulated as critical to get this ingestion of photographs and then the curation and the sharing of the stories. One of the areas that we've elected to, now we may change our mind downstream, but one of the areas that we've elected not to do ourselves is some of the areas around printing and things like this, only because it's kind of like why we decided not to get into the scanning business. There's already a really huge ecosystem out there that is doing these kind of functions that we elected not to do ourselves because we'd rather spend the money that we have kind of judiciously architecting our product to be better at what we're doing today as our core functionality. So, as a matter of fact, this might be a good thing, since we're a small, intimate group here, that I'd like to ask you guys is we're probably going to go out and develop some very jealously guarded relationships with very few providers of external services. So for instance, we're starting to create a ecosystem of scanning partners, and we will probably go out and work with scanning partners in each of the major metropolitan areas. As a matter of fact, if any of you have ones that you've worked with in the past that you feel particularly strongly about, we would love to get them into our affiliate program so that we can recommend them if you had a very good experience with them. And we're spending a lot of time curating partnerships in this area, looking for high touch, high service organizations that will do the right job for our members so that we can refer them on our website going forward. One of those areas besides scanners is the people that produce photo books and can take information out of systems like ours and then turn them into something that's a keepsake. And there's a lot of people that do this. Some of you may know Tom and Allison from Roots Tech that do very high, high production value. Their projects typically run from the $5,000 to $20,000 type projects, all the way down to people like Shutterfly that do this for $50, right? And so it's not clear to us which direction we want to go in, or whether we want to go in all directions. So as a matter of fact, I'd love to ask you guys, since there's just a nice small group here, how do you feel about this? Do you want this kind of capability? Are you looking for really high-end production, or are you really just looking for something that'll, provide some of the content and the photographs out of our system? So as we start to think this through, I can start to target the kind of vendors and the kind of companies that you might want to work with. Any thoughts? Pam, you brought it up.
Well, I was thinking that, and I said book, but maybe what I really meant was more of a print or a collection of prints. I was thinking about my personal photos, and if my cousins wanted to download all of the women in the family and then have them printed, that would be something that they might like, so that they could just say, send me this photo, this photo, this photo, and then they can hang them up on their own wall. I agree with kind of, it seems counterintuitive to be super concerned about my photo albums, to have other people make photo albums, because I agree that they're just going to end up on a shelf somewhere. Victoria totally nailed that one. If I had a photo that I could hang on my wall, that kind of is a little different than a bunch of photo albums. Someone else is just recreating a bunch of photo albums.
So let me take a shot at articulating what I think I heard. It's not so much that you want to take this and print it out and put it into a nice bound thing that you're going to either hand somebody as a gift or put on a coffee table, as much as what you'd like to do is offer people that are in your private network the opportunity of creating their own collection of photographs out of your library.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot of heads nodding right there.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%.
Okay. All right.
I've done a lot of scanning of pictures, and for pictures that have been sent to my mother and to my grandmother over years and years and years. A lot of them belong to cousins and aunts and uncles, et cetera, et cetera. I'd like to share those somehow, but I don't want to scan all those pictures that I took out of albums and put them back in albums. It seems like a
Exactly.
Yeah, so, what I'm looking at is, okay, I've got all these scanned images. Now what do I do with them?
Hmm.
And I like your idea, Victoria. That's really a nice idea what you're doing.
And I think
Oh,
too,
thank you.
start looking at printing companies. There are, as you said, the range, if you look at Shutterfly, it's cheap. It's not where you want your pictures to end up because you have to pay to get them back after, unless you
Yeah.
print Shutterfly. I think those are things you think about is maybe, and I liked what Pam said, that somebody may want to download. I want to download that one picture of Grandpa and put it on my wall. I don't want to make, if I make books, that's a whole different thing. And the range goes, like, you can go from Shutterfly all the way up to Miller's. So I think a connection with someone that had a fairly mid-range price that offered print service and books, if people want books. Some people do want them. Like, some people will make a special book for an anniversary out of this type of photos. With the large client I'm working on, we're taking pieces of her life or her ancestors' life and making products. I make her calendars with the pictures in them so she can enjoy them, because that's the thing to keep in mind too, is that for us, I'm trying to get these all on the computer just so I can share them, so I'm not constantly having people say, oh, it's got the picture of who.
Right.
But also is to be able to share them digitally, but also to be able to make special gifts for people at certain times. Because the part of printing is to be able to physically look at something. So with my client that we have back to the 1800s up till now of pictures, I'm not going to put her entire collection in albums, because it would end up with, we'd need another whole room. We just finished taking apart
Yes.
the albums. I certainly don't want to make her more, but we need to pick things because she wants to look at something. She wants to hold it in her hands and sit in her chair and look at it. And it's not a computer or an
It's a
iPad.
funny- It's a funny,
tactile piece that
yes.
that
Artifacts.
is important for some people. The artifact, not in the sense of putting everything back into albums, but in the sense of, what would she enjoy?
It's a funny story how people think about these things as it relates to what a photo means. I just came back from Arizona recently, where I put all of my mom's stuff in storage because she's now officially in an assisted living facility. And I was there. I have 4 younger sisters, and everybody's going through things. And it's really fascinating that because of the age difference, I'm the oldest and I have a younger sister that's 15 years downstream, which means that all of our exposure to our family experiences in terms of the places we lived and the people we came in touch with are very different between the oldest and the youngest. And so pictures that were important to me were not important to my youngest sister because there are different life experiences. And so I can understand, Pam, where you were talking about different components of your network may want different subsets of those photos and may want exposure to like sub albums or something like that. So that's a good piece of input. Appreciate that. Yeah, we'll take that one back.
I have a lot of cousins who think I have all the family photos. I don't think that I do, but because my mother was beloved of many of them, they all sent pictures of their kitties and their kitties' kitties and et cetera, et cetera. And I do have a lot of those photos, but each of those cousins and other family members are only interested in, like you said, a certain set of that or a subset of that.
Yeah.
And what to do with them. Okay, they're out there. So I guess what I am trying to do is build a database that has everything in it. And then you go find the ones that you want and print yourself a book. My mother used to make all these big, long genealogy books and print a bunch of pictures and who's this and all the genealogy pages that went with it, blah, 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 blah. And they're expecting me to do that. And I said, no, that's not where I'm going to go. That's passe.
Yeah.
You need to be involved in it some way. And so what I want to do is build something that they can go to and pull out, like you said, Kathy, something that they're interested in.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think it's an interesting process trying to get to how do we provide this capability and then allow for different use cases that allow for our private networks to be able to access the capabilities that they want in terms of the histories, et cetera. And then on the other side, to kind of Victoria's discovery when she went through this process, which, by the way, one of our other clients went through, where she curated this fantastic history of this World War II infantry unit, all in hard copy. All of the research is in hard copy. And the problem is that as she discovers changes or new things, she has to essentially set out this errata list that says that, oh, this is corrected from the prior version, because she's now distributed 20 hard copies to
That's the
family and
problem.
friends. And the problem is, how do you create a living document that's going to be improved over time when people discover new information, turn over a new piece of historical information, or maybe add just a new relic to the collection, right?
Yeah.
So that's the real hard thing about this. Yeah. Those
Yeah.
are good pieces of
I
input.
got an interesting message from somebody the other day. I have such and such book about the Washburn family. Are you interested in buying a copy of it? And I said, my mother made those books and I have at least 15 sitting on my shelf. Would you like to buy some more?
Right.
And that's the problem, and they're out of date. There's
Right.
lots of errors.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that goes
Well,
along with what I was saying about, you know, having the storyboards and the multiple storyboards inside an album is you can chop and change. You just pull it
And
out, put another one in.
Yeah.
I like your idea of being able to put something in automatically and
Mm.
fix whatever error there was. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
yeah, most of those kind of things, unfortunately, especially when you start to, one of the real powers of what we're doing is this idea of crowdsourcing information and allowing a large kind of a set of either people in our private network, or maybe in some cases there might be third parties that have additional information, like in the case of Pam, if your situation where there may be people that might have some Civil War history that maybe you hadn't come across yet. It's hard to imagine based on how long you've been doing this. But the idea of crowdsourcing this information is such that anytime you produce a hard copy of anything, it is almost out of date immediately upon its printing.
Yep.
And we've got to kind of stop investing and spending money on that, because I think the idea of figuring out how to create these living documents that people can then consume and add and modify and update really becomes the value in the curation of these histories.
Mm. I've just got a quick question, because I mentioned before that I'm going to send this album out crowdsourcing for information to my cousins. Has anybody sent to 20 people before?
Oh.
No, this will be the test.
Well, we have done it in test.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
you know,
you're doing one at a time. You're doing one at a time, but I want to see of the 20 what I get
Right.
back.
We do know some best practices in terms of doing it essentially at scale. The first and most important thing is that invitations from chatting with Anne here. Invitations that you send directly from within Ponga absolutely head out to the destination site, but because email systems don't know who they're coming from, they'll flop them over into a tab that says, an updates tab typically. We work very hard to make sure they don't go into that dreadful, spam folder or something like that. So we work hard to maintain that. But in order to get directly in front of them to catch their attention, the best practice is to send them an email to tell them it's coming. Now, if you're going out to your 30 cousins, maybe it's not a bad idea to send them in one email that everybody can see everybody else to see who's getting it. That's not a bad idea. Or you can filter the different family groups, whatever. But then when you send it into Ponga, in Ponga, you can send to 30 people at the same time. There is a how to share a picture or something like that article that covers it, but essentially it's just a string. So email, comma, or comma space is fine. Email, comma, and then you paste in your one message. So it's good to kind of just like anything you do at scale, you want to be careful and make sure you've got all the details right so you get it right the first time. But
Yeah.
that's a fine thing to do. And you're absolutely right to take your time to do it carefully. And I'm happy to field questions. And I don't think I've written up kind of a best practices on that, to send the email first and then follow up with the scale Ponga email and exactly what that looks like. Happy to write those up. And I've done those.
I did.
I'd love to
Yeah,
have that.
Sorry, Connie?
we had a conversation. Sorry, Connie?
I was going to say I'd like to have that because I sent something to my sister and she had no clue how to get into it. So
Oh, okay. And by the
Yeah.
way, we did have a little bump that made it a little hard to get past that. And I think we've fixed that now, which should make it a lot easier. Essentially, if someone comes into Ponga, tries to log into Ponga, even though you've sent them an email that they didn't see the email, we now will just trigger another email right away that they can just go right in that way. Let me send you back an email to make sure you're coming in to see the pictures you were invited to actually from your real email address, not just the email address you say you have, is really an important security feature, as you might imagine. Nobody wants to have their treasured pictures shared to a stranger who just happened to camp on the email address. That's the key danger there.
Well, I took some at your advice about that best practices. And because I'm a tad anal about these things and love a good spreadsheet, I've just developed a what to do in the order that I need to do it. So I've got this thing to my cousin and I have personalized it. I've dragged some stuff off my website about why I've done this album, what to expect, what they're going to receive. They're going to look for invitations at Ponga. And then I've got my two. I've got that I pop into the message when I'm actually sharing the album, the actual album. I have one thing that I talk about, and then the other album that holds all the photographs, the individual photographs, that has another message.
Great.
And I just copy and paste and copy and paste.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. That's pretty much exactly the best practice. And Connie, good tip. I will write that up and phrase it that way.
How to make it easy for them to know what they need to do to see what I put out there.
Yeah.
That you want to share it with them. But in my sister's case, she's not particularly technically oriented. She does a great job with interior design, but not technical. Anyway, it's just hard for her. Some of these people, they just don't know the way around a computer.
No, that's right. That's right. And these kinds of social aspects are really key to actually making it work. I think when you've done the heavy lifting of uploading pictures and thinking through what do I want, what are the questions to ask and how to phrase and describe what you've done, to then how to solicit and get them engaged. I've got your pictures. Don't you want to see them?
There you go. That's what I want to say. The problem is I'm not one of the oldest cousins. And so time is of the essence.
I agree with you. I have a couple of my own oldest cousins and trying to figure out what it is that gets them comfortable. Is really important. That's one of the reasons, Ponga's not an app that you have to download and install on your tablet. And then, oh, wait, you don't have that. You have a phone version, not the app tablet version. And then, oh, wait, you don't have a this and that. No, it just works in your browser. If you can do Zoom, you can do Ponga. You can also do Ponga over Zoom. And I do have an article about that one, because doing Ponga over Zoom is actually really great. I did it with my 82-year-old cousin. And
that's what I've got a lot of 82-year-old.
Yeah. Okay, I will get you that article. Absolutely.
To Anna, Connie, and Victoria, I mean, when you guys first started using Ponga, what was the hardest piece about it?
I didn't find it hard at all. But once I got in there and I saw what the face recognition was doing, I got very frustrated. Okay. And now I'm listening to what I believe it was Kathy and Pam are saying. I should have done it 10 photos at a time. So I have gone back. So the hardest part is I was not prepared to put it in Ponga. Yeah, I had all these folders of pictures, but they were not prepared correctly. And now I need to take them out, because what I've been doing in the last couple of months since I met with you is scanning, labeling, identifying, and identifying. And what's kind of nice is I'll get to a picture that I don't know whose kids they are, although I suspect like this cute little thing. I have no idea who she is, but I think it's one of my sisters. I think it's one of my sisters. So I have scanned them, so they're
Right.
digital, and I'll send them to my sister and I say, are these yours?
Yeah, exactly. You know what, Connie, I'm going to follow up this call with, I'm going to send you that article. And I'm also going to suggest we do a live call and you show me where you are right now, because I have a feeling that given exactly where it is right now, we can actually accelerate it. If you have a lot of people in the gallery, for example, we can make that a lot
deleting
easier.
everything you're talking about?
Sorry?
Without deleting everything and
Yeah,
starting
yeah.
over again?
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll take a look. We can do that.
Okay.
We can fix
So
that up.
do I need to call you or what?
Don't call me. I'll call you. I'm going to give you one of my links to set up a time, and we'll just have a leisurely time one-on-one.
I will appreciate that very much. I'd like to get back into it because I really like what Victoria's doing. I want to get into that. That sounds great.
I can't say that to be honest with you, Cameron, I can't say that there was anything that I found difficult or off-putting. I did get a chuckle when my mother, who is the oldest with 5 younger brothers, all her brothers were recognized as her.
Yeah.
In the
That's the
children's
problem.
photos. But they all have the same features. They're all these beautiful little children, and they all have the same nose and the same eyes. And then I just did it all and it was done. It did make me chuckle a little bit. But other than that, I mean, and it's understandable why that happens. They have the same features. It's facial recognition. It's recognizing their facial features. So I can't think of anything really that was a problem for me.
Okay.
If anything, it opened up a Pandora's box for me. Really
Yeah.
And me too.
Yeah.
Actually, that, in a way, that's kind of a good thing, though, because in a way, because it speaks to the fact that we've got broad and deep functionality. And maybe we just need to figure out a way of stepping through a little bit more in a more structured fashion from a get started perspective, right? And then you can run amok and do all these cool things that you're doing in there individually. Yeah.
Because I think with a lot of things, Ponga is different things to different people. It's like not everybody uses a kitchen spatula in the same way. You know, a piece of string isn't always a piece of string. Sometimes it's a hair tie. So it's kind of that thing. And I'll use it for one way, and Anna will use it for another way, and Connie will use it for another way. And there is that common thread. We're communicating through pictures and dialogue. But some people will want to use it in a completely different way.
Thanks. Anna, what are your thoughts?
Yes, so because I'm using computers quite a lot and different softwares and try and test, I probably on purpose choose to just upload a certain smaller amount of photos to play around with and test out all the different functionalities, which is basically what I'm still doing. But I'm starting finding cool ways. So all these photos, like the one I used to have in the background before, with all the people on where we don't know who they are, that if I can get up other photos, the facial recognition when it works. However, they're all related to each other, so that might turn up problems with that as well. But it's a way of actually finding out who they really are, even if those generations are long gone. Because lots of the adults in those pictures, they died in the 1920s, 1930s.
Right.
Or even earlier, some of them. So some of my oldest photos are taken 1861.
So I have a question for all of you. what do you do with those? I have several albums that I have no clue who those people are. I know who took the pictures, so I know who her subjects were. It was my aunt, and she died in 1930. My mother's gone. All of my mother's family is gone, and none of us know who some of those are. I recognize my grandmother in some of those photos, and I recognize some of my aunts and uncles. But what do you do with those? Like you were saying, Victoria, you're beating your head because you threw them in the trash. What do you do with them?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, I guess there's a couple of little tricks. One is, where's the photograph taken? Is there some kind of context in the photograph? Is it a house on a street? Is there some kind of a landmark behind it? Is it a circus? Is it 4th of July? Something that identifies where they are. It's a tough one. And to be honest, there may be some people
part's not hard because she didn't move around a lot, so I know where they all are. But I'd like to know who the people in it are. I know they're all her friends, and she was a very gregarious person, obviously because of the number of pictures she has. But so I guess I just don't know what to do with those.
You know, to a certain extent, it's important to give yourself some time. Because as you know, you can take the ones you don't know and call those mysteries. You can call them something relative to what you do know. You can give them a non-real name, and and park it, or you can leave it in the gallery and come back to it later as you go down the road and start talking to more people, because this isn't all one thing. It's not just one project. It can just take its time and be leisurely and start pulling in and like a puzzle. You fill in the pieces that you do know, and slowly you start surrounding those you don't know, and you discover things that I think I've shared that Harger family picture of Harger family picnic, I call it, with a lot of people. And to me, that was a mystery photo where I didn't know who these people are. There's still one guy, Mr. Bachelor. I don't know who he is. And I just have these funny ideas about what it might have really been. I rather suspect his last name was simply Bachelor. But I now know who the photographer was. And that was really satisfying to be able to, or a pretty good idea anyway. In that case, because I know he was a photographer, but also he shows up with other people in other pictures, apparently the same day. And that makes total sense because his wife is like staring right at him.
So obviously I know more than some people do about some pictures, because I know who took them and I know where she took them. I just don't know who's in the photos. So maybe it could be a generic album or a generic PowerPoint saying, pictures. And she was a school teacher.
This is again the power of the crowdsourcing idea that we tried to come up with. I have a personal example in my own immediate family where, before Ponga was even available, this is a story from last fall, where I got in touch with a cousin of mine because my mother's, whose memory is fading a little bit, told me about this woman that was apparently important in her life, but couldn't tell me anything about it. This person, I called a cousin who I haven't spoken to in 5 years and said, hey, have you ever heard of this woman? And she said, not only have I heard of her, I can tell you, and she proceeded to launch into 20 minutes worth of anecdotes about the history of this woman, which was unbelievably colorful, to the point where I was actually taking some notes as I was going, because this was pre-Ponga in our world. But this is part of the deal, right? Is that, in post-Ponga, what I could have done is put that picture and that name and said, hey, who knows anything about this, out to my family. And she could have actually curated commentary right then and there on the photo. And that would have added tremendous color that then essentially any number of the 30 or 40 people now in my family that I know that know a little bit about this story could have added points of view or recollections, and we could have collaborated on this entire history around this woman, who turns out was a pretty important and colorful gal. And so that's, I think, a lot of the power of being able to do what we're encouraging people to do from a sharing perspective. The sharing thing, though, is interesting because, as I think we just surveyed about 20 minutes ago, a lot of you all haven't tried a lot of that yet. And we're finding this the case in a lot of situations, is that there's this, I don't know if it's the level of maturation upon which you've started to do that curation, or whether there's a little bit nervousness of sending something out that might not be public ready, or whether or not there's just some concern about where that might go out in the ether sphere. But I would encourage everybody to give it a shot with at least 1 or 2 people, just for the experience of doing it, to start to get some velocity in the communications and the crowdsourcing and the sharing components.
I've started introducing the software to my cousin in Sweden, who is also scanning photos, family photos. So I brought the laptop with me, opened it up, and started showing him pictures within Ponga. So I logged in and showed him, so that he's prepared for what is coming, so that we can share that way and share stories, add bits and pieces.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
So sometimes when people don't use computers in the same way as I do, so for example, I did send out an invitation to one of the photos to my sister.
Yeah.
She followed the link, and when she realized that she had to create a free account,
Yeah.
it was, no thanks, I don't want to do that.
Yeah. That's where I got to.
Can you email the picture to me instead?
Yeah, so so that's a good question. Let me ask you something about this. This is me with my marketing hat on. And since we're now even more intimate groups, since we're going way over time, the whole idea of counting a free account is not so much to create an account. It's more that we need to authorize the users to make sure they're who they say they are, because this is how we manage the privacy and security of the invitation that you're making to that content, right?
Yeah.
And we want to be very careful about that, because, you know, in my own family, I have this anecdote that I've used before, is that my father has a photograph of a young man holding a mug of beer, and he's sitting around in a shirt like I have. It's actually a white Oxford button-down shirt, and he's standing up, and he's got red and white striped boxer shorts on, showing under his shirt while he's holding a beer. Well, that gentleman became the chairman of the Dallas First Bank. So he would not want that photograph floating around in the ether somewhere, because the rest of the board of directors of the Dallas First Bank might not like that. So that's part of the reason that we put all these authorizations and things in place.
Opportunity for blackmail.
Yes, exactly. But having said that, Anna, would it be different if we would have said, instead of signing up for a free account, we would say that we want to make sure that we're checking your identity to make sure that you're the right person that's supposed to receive this. We'll still have to sign them up for an account, because that's how we do that. But maybe the nervousness they had is that they didn't want to create a presence on Ponga for themselves. But we still have to figure out how to check their identity, right? And verify that they are who they say they are.
I think when it comes to my sister, she's really being very cautious when it comes to internet and anything like that. So it's just, you know, she had the same attitude when it came to DNA testing. It was a big no-no.
Yeah.
And
how old is she?
She's 1 year younger than me. So
Okay.
It was just a very different attitude, and so I didn't even take the discussion with her, because she was basing her attitude on how all the companies sell the DNA tests, which is the ethnic composition, which is totally non-scientific and a lot of rubbish.
Right.
To be honest.
Yeah.
Well, it is. And what I then did was that I took a test, and then I wrote about it in the newsletter for the family research. So I wrote a 3-step story about my DNA journey. And after the first story, she sent me an email and asked, okay, where do I sign up? Where do I buy the test?
Oh, there you go.
There you go.
Sometimes you have to, you know, I've learned that to get her to do certain things, I might have to treat her like the teenagers I work with in the youth club.
Well, one of the
I have to
things,
trick them into changing their mind.
yeah, the
Yeah.
reason I asked about her age was because what I am discovering, my mother gets these. I actually get these at my incredibly tender age. And I'm finding that there's a lot of information floating around that are scaring people that are above 55-ish maybe, and they're coming in through lots of locations, AARP, general information that are trying to warn about elder abuse and about people that aren't sophisticated, about phishing attacks. And, you know, people are always going to be sending you emails to sign up for something. And I'm wondering if there's this impression that when they get an invitation and they sign up for an account, that maybe that they're being the subject of a phishing attack or something like that.
The thing is, it could be because she knows that I do family research, and she has heard me swearing about both ancestry and my heritage, especially my heritage, because they are very, very aggressive
Yes.
in trying to sell you to pay, so you can sign up for free, but then you get pestered.
Yeah.
And that's a situation that a lot of people don't want to have.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I've got around it by not giving them my phone number, so they can't phone me. They just bombard me with emails. But then I can just.
I have a sister as well. I have a sister as well, Anna, who is very internet savvy, a web designer, and I said, I want to share this with you, and she said, oh, you know, I've got to sign up, and I said, oh, that's you need to sign up to have a look at it. She says, oh, I don't want my email box flooded with emails.
Yeah.
So there is that perception of when you sign for something, you're going to get potentially smashed with follow-up emails. Perhaps the wording around it is, you know, we're doing this to protect you and the person who has invited you, who personally knows you and doesn't want to scam you. And, you know, maybe a little of that. I mean, ultimately, we do want them to love the product.
That is quite true.
Yeah, I mean, we'll do our
Yeah.
best to maybe add some positioning information within that email so the user knows a little bit. Maybe we'll just add some more perspective. And frankly, it could be something that maybe we'll ask each one of you, since we're having this conversation, to maybe weigh in on a little bit that would make the community feel comfortable. You know, ultimately, we do want to expand our membership by exposing people to the product, because the more people that use it, that become in the network, the more valuable the network becomes at large. And there could be some exciting things, like Connie, that could happen downstream, where you may find people that can add value to photographs that aren't even among your kind of, you know, filial relationships, right? And so as a consequence, we want to figure out how to expand the scope of that, but we also don't want to come across as MyHeritage. So there's a fine line that we need to walk in terms of soliciting people to try the product, use it, and get excited about it, but we don't want to be sending them emails every day either. So we get that.
I wanted to insert also the approach that Victoria has done for a certain set of her albums, to make them available to outsiders whose email she doesn't know you, she doesn't know that you're interested in it, so creates a form to do that. And the form doesn't come to Ponga, it comes to her. Then she can decide whether she wants to invite them or not. It's still an invitation for Victoria. Actually, she's made that invitation to all of you participating in this meeting. That was in the email that I sent with a reminder, for example. And it's super easy to do that. I have a Google form. I'd be very happy to share with you. You can just copy the Google form if you use that kind of thing, or walk you through any other tool to do that. But it is, you know, the language, the boilerplate language that we put in those outbound emails is something we're always trying to figure out how to refine more. We did just make some changes so that it just minimizes any of the little speed bumps as you go through that registration process. And I've certainly
Just
tried
gave
to
me
be
a-
careful.
just gave me an
Uh-oh.
idea. Yeah, just gave me, well, I'm going to send
Oh,
that
this is
email.
how it
that-
starts. This is how it starts.
No, yeah, that's how it starts. No, just the email that I'm going to send out to my 20 plus cousins, saying, you know, I'd like to share with you. I'm going to put the form in the email.
Oh,
Yeah,
terrific.
exactly. A screenshot of the form.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it just makes it less scary. Who is it from? Here is what it's going to look like. You know, when you sign up with Airbnb, you can't contact the host directly.
Nope.
You know, but why not? Well, yeah, because their side is afraid of you.
Yeah, they're protected.
Exactly.
Right.
So it's
Well,
some
that's
of
good
those
input.
same kinds of examples.
Yeah, that's really great input. So thank you guys for providing that. We will noodle on that a little bit and see if we can't figure out an improved way to do this, because we want to make it easy for you to share with other people, not only to expand the scope of the influence that your photos and your stories have, but also to crowdsource. And honestly, you know, to be transparent, we also want to see if we can't move Ponga's awareness further into the marketplace, because the more people that use it, like I say, the more valuable the network becomes. And that's ultimately downstream what will make it very rewarding. So we appreciate the
Have you
support. and the
thought
idea.
about how to try to move in on the European market?
That's a really great question, Anna. We've had a couple of thoughts about that. We're not sure yet. We've actually been brainstorming different ways of doing something like that relative to organizations that it might be important to partner with, or maybe finding somebody. I've had this idea that maybe what we would do is figure out if there's a way that we could create almost an ambassador position on a country by country basis, where somebody could kind of lead some of our awareness and evangelical efforts in different countries where they may have either a particular interest or a residency or a connection with either a genealogical or a photo management or a storytelling kind of event, and represent us in that fashion. So we're still kind of toying with what the right idea might be. So if you've got any ideas, keep them coming.
So basically you had the genealogy show in the UK
Last week.
was last Friday and Saturday.
Right.
And there were some American companies present in the exhibition zone.
Yes, we
Oh,
actually
yeah.
participated in that with a blog post that was apparently part of that. Our feeling was for where we are right now as a company, and the very, very specific genealogical focus of the event, that it wasn't quite something that we could justify right now. That was the only reason. It's interesting that you bring it up. However, given your background, and I've been trying to figure out just whether, you know, taking the time to do a post for them was helpful, and how many people that reached, that kind of thing.
Well, because I can ask around in Sweden, because I know that the genealogy fair in Sweden is coming up in the beginning of September sometime.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm part of a group, and I think it's a Facebook group.
Mm.
They do live stream every Thursday for an hour in the evening. And I'm one of there is a few sort of Swedish people who live outside of the country who participates, because it's online and you can do it that way then.
Yeah, yeah.
And they have different themes every week.
Huh.
And it's a lot about sending in photos. So
Oh, wow.
So this week's Thursday, I've tried to remember what the theme was. I just heard it sort of quickly earlier tonight. Yeah, I think it is some. Let's go with last week. Last week
Right.
was for football,
Right.
because it's Euro Cup going on
Right.
in
Right.
soccer. So soccer for
Right.
those of you
Sure.
North America, but football for the rest of us. And other themes have been books, old books.
Right.
There has been themes around, you know, hospitals and nurseries, and when you have relatives and stories, people who do sports. There have been themes. We had one that was around fun fairs and carnivals and stuff like that.
One of the things that we realize is that there are 10,000 different Facebook groups related to genealogy. There are a number of big ones, and we do participate in those. And there are so many many of them are huge and very deep and rich, but they are in a topic that, individually, we're such a small company that individually we can't participate in richly and authentically, which is why, to Cameron's point, we are very interested in working with partners and friends. Victoria on the caravans in Australia. We will take these things one at a time, because we learn so much from individuals who go deep with us, who have the innovation and the ideas about where we can take these things. One of the things that I especially am excited, frankly, because of your participation, you totally impressed us from the Roots Tech conversation when you were sharing with us the depth and range of your very complex family connections, and all the ways in which it sounds as though you're pulling a lot of these together and working with so many of the organizations and moving these forward. We're very interested in ways to do that, in particular across geographic borders, because one of the things that Ponga does, because it runs in a browser, we have all the language benefits of browsers. So you can have comments left in Swedish that are read by an American who doesn't speak Swedish, and have the browser go ahead and do that translation for them, the same way Facebook does. Well, okay, so they have translators, but for a lot of that kind of basic automation, that's a really big deal to have that flexibility. And so we're going to talk, Cameron, on this little sidebar. Anna and I have set up a meeting.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that a way into the genealogy sphere is that a lot of people are, because we've been talking about books and we've been talking about Victoria's storyboards and slides and albums, and not everyone has the capability of writing a book about their family.
Mm-hmm.
And to use Ponga the way Victoria is doing, you can do like a short story, which is interactive, which is it's like storytelling around the campfire almost.
Mhm.
So it's about a way of sharing your research information with the people who are not researchers, who are not interested in reading tables up and down with dates and stuff like that. So it's what family researchers calls you're dressing your relatives. You're giving them,
I love
you're
that.
giving them life by
Yeah.
telling the
Yes.
stories around and their backgrounds.
Yeah.
And
I like that.
that is where Ponga can come in and be very, very useful.
I love that. That is exactly right. We talk about adding the color, giving them life, adding the color,
Yeah.
but the richness that has the detail of a narrator, that has the feelings and the light and has the attribution. So there may be factors that are not documented, but you've got the pieces that you're juxtaposing and then telling that story. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
that's a good thought. It's good advice. I'd love to have more conversations about this. And so I really appreciate you asking that question, because we're trying to sort through what makes sense. The one thing we have discovered is that either a storytelling, some kind of picture management, photo management, and genealogical activity, there is something going on literally somewhere every day. And so we've got to kind of pick our
Events.
spots in terms of where we go. And as an entity, a small entity and growing, you know, one of the things that we're hoping for is a certain sense of virality. In other words, you know, as you do what you guys are doing, that your personal networks will get exposed to Ponga and hopefully they'll become adopters, but word of mouth will drive a little bit of that. When we start to get a little bit of gravity and a little bit more traction and momentum, along with some influx of additional resources, we expect to be able to push deeper and deeper into that. But we're probably going to have to choose our spots reasonably judiciously. So if you have something that you specifically know about, feel free to poke Barbara or myself and say, hey, you guys, if you've thought of this, have you considered this event, or, you know, maybe here's somebody you should know, or here's a new unique use case. Whatever it is, keep the input coming, because we get so much of richness in terms of the way we even think about our own product from you guys, that it adds tremendous value. And we really want to be known by our members, you know, who you are, what you're doing, and how successful you're being with the product. Because if we don't do that, then the rest of it doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah, that just made me think of something again. I mean, if there were events dotted around, and mainly North America, let's say you suddenly had an event, pick a city, Chicago, a lot of people live there, and you've got relatives that live there. You could, with one of my storyboard ideas, all you got to do is change a storyboard, put a little box in there. Hey, you know, Ponga's going to be doing something in Chicago next weekend. Go check them out.
Mhm.
Put the slide up, redo it, and they're going to get a notice that there's been a change made to a slide or picture, and off they go. Little tiny.
No, it's clever, clever marketing idea. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
there are little tricks.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Imagine,
literally, we were
imagine
making,
live events.
yeah, we were making a
Yeah.
joke the other day. One of our partners, his parents have kind of become full-time nomads as well. And they're actually part of a group that is part of the Methodist Church, and they actually call themselves the Nomads. And they're an RV army, and they go around and they do events sponsored by the Methodist Church that are designed to be kind of, you know, Good Samaritan oriented. So in other words, if there's a hurricane or there's a power failure or something, they go there en masse and help out the residents and things like that. And we've actually been joking, this other partner and myself, about maybe what we should do is just get a list of all the events that are in the United States and get an RV and just go from town to town to town and do that, and just show
Not
up.
such a crazy
person.
idea.
Yeah, no, you know what? You know, I'm taking a leaf
Cameron,
out of the
you
book.
will
Yeah.
look the same on an iPhone from transmitting your Zoom call. It's okay
Actually, I'd
with
probably
me.
look better because I wouldn't have an ugly closet behind me. So
Yeah.
I'll have the thing like
Get your green
Victoria.
screen.
Right, I'll
I
have
need a
the
bumper.
curtains.
I need a nice bumper sticker for the back of my motorhome.
That's exactly.
Ah, with a QR code, we could do this.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Actually, it's funny you should say that. So a friend of mine who's a Land Rover aficionado sent me a thing the other day, and it's about a guy who is doing videos on camping or something. And he's got a bumper sticker with his name and a little YouTube logo. And the video that they sent me was him driving up the street and parking, and the video, as the car is coming towards you, the video narrows down from the whole picture of the car just to the bumper sticker, which just basically says, it says Bushwhacker, what is it? Bushwhacker Overland on YouTube. And that's all it says on the bumper sticker. And that's how he drives marketing activity.
Well, it's
Oh.
not such a crazy idea, because people do
We got
look.
this.
What have you got on your bumper?
What
Right.
else are you going to
They
look
do.
at?
Victoria, if you'll use it, I will make you up and send you a Ponga bumper sticker.
I would put it on my motorhome.
Actually, we got this because we were already on our Canva thing. So I send her the
Oh,
Canva
good.
link and we get it
Perfect.
printed locally, and we're on our
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
on to the Canva thing now.
And
I did
Anna,
this in the Facebook group because when you send in a story and photos, they normally want you to come in live and talk during the live stream.
Right.
And normally I do that from my room, sort of where I live in UK. But last time when it was the fun fairs, and I was going to tell a story about the flea circus in 1923 at an amusement park in Stockholm. And because I was in Stockholm, and because it was Thursday evening, and if I'm in Stockholm on Thursday evenings, I always go to the International Press Club, which is a pub or bar rather that specializes in Belgian beers.
Ah.
They have over 750 beers from Belgium in that place, and they serve very nice food as well. And so I was sitting live streaming from that place.
Great.
What an outstanding idea, because there's nothing better than spending your afternoon in the bar where you can tell somebody, I've been at the press club all day.
Yeah, it sounds very
And
impressive.
then
Yeah.
the others were sort of saying, oh yeah, and if you live in the Stockholm area, Anna is at the press club, just go over there and talk to her.
That's perfect.
Have a beer.
Well, listen, thank you two very much for participating today. I know we've gone so far over time, we've kind of progressively lost people, but
and
I do
Anna is
appreciate-
8 hours ahead. She's
Yeah.
Yeah, well and truly it's time
Britain.
for bed.
Oh my gosh, you're yeah. But thank you very much. We're doing another one of these on the 30th, and Kathy Stone will be talking a little bit about her business and her participation both from a genealogical and a photo management perspective. So she's going to have some interesting insights about use cases and things like that. So hope you guys will attend again next month.
Yeah, definitely.
And I
And
know
I-
we'll be talking in the interim.
And I think going forward, we'll start alternating these after July 30th so that Victoria could attend Kathy's, but then after that, starting in August, I think, we'd be delighted to do something that would be a little more Europe friendly. And in
Yeah.
fact,
Yeah.
Anna, let's talk a little bit when we chat on Monday. We can talk a little bit about some of the kinds of topics and areas. I have a feeling you're going to have some very good ideas.
Yeah.
So we can at least do it on a California morning
Absolutely.
to participate. And in any case, it's a delight again, as always. Victoria, thank you. Let you get about your day.
Oh, I thank you. I thank you.
And
Been
Anna,
great.
thank you so much for staying up so late. Get some rest, and we'll talk on Monday at, did we say 6 p.m. your time, which I think, I'll do the math, but I believe that's 8 or 9 my time. I don't worry, I got the math. You get some rest.
All right. Thank you very much, both of you.
And we'll
Yeah,
get
thank
this
you.
video.
Good to see you again, Anna, and delightful to meet you, Victoria. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, great to meet you too, Cameron. Lovely to talk.
Yep, we'll do again. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.